When we're discussing matters wealth task or even just releasing your lifestyle audit and things of that nature, African countries particularly are at the forefront in this conversation. In today's debate, we have a very interesting scenario here where we have students from the same school debating the motion, African countries should introduce the wealth tax to reduce income inequality. I repeat the motion again. African countries should introduce the wealth tax to reduce income inequality. Debating this motion, we have Moi Forces Academy, Team A and Team B, and may the best team win. Team proposition, first speaker, you have 3 minutes.
Due to the issue in the status quo where in Africa we have 40% of the people below the poverty line, ways have to be formulated to raise these people. This poverty line instance is actually brought about by the inequality of income distribution, which is why today we are posed with the motion African countries should introduce wealth tax to solve or to reduce income inequality. I am Alfred Mutua, here to propose the motion from the Moi Forces Academy. Some of the basic terms in the motion are income inequality and wealth tax. Income inequality refers to the unequal distribution among funds, unequal distribution of funds among individuals or households of a given population. And wealth tax, this is tax that is levied on a group of people or households based on their net worth and assets. So with those two in mind, one must wonder, how will we implement this wealth tax? Because we're not just coming and saying, you're rich, you be taxed. You're not rich, you don't be taxed. No, we are providing a framework that deals with consistent and clear pricing, that deals with education, that deals with gradual implementation, that deals with monitoring and enforcement, and public education. This is our framework. But one again must wonder, how is this wealth tax gonna work? Like, how has it worked in other countries? According to a stat posted by OECD, we have that in in Norway has one of the longest histories of wealth tax. And a term that I forgot to mention was the Gini coefficient, which actually means the measure of income inequality. So in Norway, a country that is using this wealth tax has a Gini coefficient of 0.237%. Before the wealth tax, however, 0.307%. More statistics, we have Switzerland. Initially 0.307, currently 0.292. Wealth tax vis-a-vis no wealth tax. But then, how will this wealth tax actually reduce the income inequality? We have various methods, of which I will talk about balancing the tax burden. Now, according to a statistic according to the World Inequality Database, we have that the top 1% of the rich actually are in charge of 41% of the total wealth in Africa, in the world. The top 1%. And if you go down further, according to the same statistic, we get that 30% of the rich, the top tier, are responsible for 70% of the total wealth. So what are we doing? We're coming up with a way whereby this 1%, this 30%, actually puts in the extra mile that these people, these 70% that are scrambling for the remaining 30%. So we're levying a tax on their net assets, and we're levying a tax on these people and their belongings that will actually benefit not only the poor, but also the economy and everything else, thus combating income inequality. Yeah, I'm done.
Team opposition, first speaker, you have 3 minutes.
African countries should introduce a wealth tax to reduce income inequality. Clinton Teniola from Moi Forces Academy here to oppose the motion. First off, I'd like to agree with the definition of terms, but just to emphasize on income inequality and wealth tax. Income inequality is clearly the desperate measure between the wealth difference between the rich and the poor, showing the gap that there actually is and is evident and is clear. Wealth tax, as he has said, is a tax levied on people's personal, individual, and assets and in terms of network, etc. They have come and preached the gospel on the framework of wealth tax, But I want to show you the fact that this idea of wealth tax is far-fetched and won't work in African countries. Why won't it work? First of the main points being tax avoidance. People will tend to take their wealth to other countries that actually show low or no jurisdiction on taxes. This makes the idea ineffective, because what are we taxing if there's no wealth? The second thing is, tax is still tax, whether it's wealth tax, whether it's luxury tax. Tax is still tax. This is the tax we gave the government, and what did the government do? KRA, as per their official website, showed that 51 cases of deliberate tax evasion, and 20 of them being from government officials. In 2019, 30% of Nigerians' budget disappeared and seemed to have melted in the government's hands. This tax is still tax. So why will we give the government more money in terms of tax with the claim of they will make life better? As team opposition, yes, we agree. Income inequality is actually a cause and is actually a prominent issue in most of African states. But we need to understand that wealth tax won't be the solution to this. Our case, we have solutions that we are going to feed you and table to curb income inequality. The first of it being minimum wage policies. African countries need to adopt and ensure policies whereby people are certain of a minimum wage based on their labor. I am sure I'm going to bed with $20 knowing I worked for this amount of hours. This is what will bring about change in countries in terms of income inequality. Countries need to show that this income inequality will actually change depending on inflation and change in cost of the country. This means they should be adjustable and measurable. Second solution, promoting gender equality. We need to wake up and think the fact that there is no difference between male and female. We need to actually understand that all of us need equal distribution of resources, equal distribution of materials, etc. Promoting equal distribution in businesses, promoting equal payment in terms of work, how much we all earn, and this should be the same no matter your gender. We should also ensure there's promoted education in terms of female and male. There's no way we are taking a male to school just because he's a male. We need to promote gender equality if we want to fight income inequality. And as I said, as I rest my case, my rest of the teammates will come and expound on the rest of our solutions. Thank you.
Team Proposition, second speaker, you have 3 minutes.
As the motion of dissection stands today, African countries should introduce wealth tax in order to reduce income inequality. Now, allow me to reiterate or redraft a few delusional cases from my first opposer. He comes and tells us that what we are taxing, that there's nothing we are, allow me to quote, there is nothing we are taxing because there is actually no wealth. But according to my statistic, published by Statista.com on the 14th of September 2020 by Alfred Mutua, he tells us that 40% of Africa is actually mismanaged, of Africa's wealth, okay? Now, I want you to take this wealth and put it right there, where we're going to tax this wealth and extract its revenue. Take that revenue, those delusional cases about 1, investment in education and skills, 2, promoting gender equality and minimum wage adoption policy. All those require funding. They require money to start. Those are just among the few they'll mention. We are from the same research table. We shouldn't hide this. They have another 5 of them pocketed within their speakers, and I can assure you, every single one of them that they are going to mention requires funding that will be funded from the revenue gained from wealth tax. That's as simple as I said. But now, here comes the question. They've all given alternatives about wealth tax, but where is the income inequality aspect in terms of 1, equitable economic growth, 2, poverty reduction, and 3, good governance? On to my first point, because I don't like dealing with delusional cases. I think the man of facts is also in front of you today. Redistribution of wealth, just as he said, equal distribution. How will this happen? According to Statista.com, again, published on the 14th of September 2018, John Mugambi tells us that 36% of Kenyans live below the poverty line. 44% of Africans in total live below the poverty line, including 43% in DRC and 38% in Uganda. That's $1.2 a day. Imagine surviving on that. You have 5 kids. Your wife needs clothing, not the girl who's seated next to you. But listen, there's someone who's cruising in a Range Rover denying this, and that's them. So what am I saying? The tax levied or the tax levied on the wealth accumulation will bring revenue, as I said at first. Now we'll take this revenue and fund things such as 1, social programs, 2, invest in public infrastructure, 3, assistance in disadvantaged groups, and of course, smart agriculture and mining. What we are known for. Yes, I'm not a fan of Chelsea, I'm not wealthy, but my case is healthy. Hamza Hussein, signing out. The epitome of the forces, the portrait of the forces is in front of you. Thank you.
Team opposition, you have 3 minutes.
40% of Africa's wealth is mismanaged. I quote, 36% of people in Kenya live below the poverty line. I quote, 43% of individuals in Africa are below the poverty line. I quote, that's how accountable our African governments are. Now this man wants to come here and tell us we should give him more tax, while this is the current status quo with the tax they already have. Africa loses $149 billion attributed to corruption and mismanagement of funds. And according to Al Jazeera, United Nations Development Program estimates that Africa requires $200 billion to be able to fund its sustainable development programs now. What we are saying is that we do not need to impose a wealth tax. There is enough wealth within the government itself. The government has been able to become accountable of the tax we have given them time and time again. And they come and preach about a policy of framework, of how they're going to have good policies and how they will be monitoring. My question is, where is that monitoring now? When our economy is plundering, when we are facing inflation in prices, when we have economic instability, when people are dying of hunger due to income inequality, which was caused by the corruption of the government in the first place, they want to give this same corrupt government taxes to fix the problem they caused. How is the solution to tax more tax? It's not. Simply, it lies within the reaffirmation of the government itself. We want this government to become conscious of their actions. We want them to manage the funds we've given them already well, and that will mean we will have sufficient funds and income to fund this, to reduce income inequality. Points that go forth with my argument. We need to invest in education and skills. We need to take our citizens to schools so that they can go learn and get the skills that will give them hope for when they're out there in these industries hustling. Not one of them has one hand behind the back because he didn't get enough education. We need to have all the citizens getting equal education despite their backgrounds or the gender or the ethnicity. Number 2, we need to have safety net programs. This means for the disadvantaged individuals in the groups, we need to give them a safe zone. We need to give these people who do not have jobs a safe way to get healthcare and a safe way to at least bring something to the table at night. How do we do this? By making the government more accountable with the funds they have, and that way we get our case. Case studies. I won't go abroad. I won't go to Switzerland. I'll go to Africa, where we are now. Tunisia, Rwanda, Botswana. Tunisia having a Gini coefficient of 0.35. Mauritius having a Gini coefficient of 0.38. Rwanda having a Gini coefficient of 0.48. And what did they do? They didn't implement wealth tax. They had effective governance, prudent management of natural resources, various social welfare programs, and inclusive economic policies. Think wise, not otherwise. Come to side up. Thank you.
Team Proposition have been asked how will they ensure accountability from the revenue that is collected from this wealth task, and Team Opposition have been asked to validate their claims that if we will be relocating our money to continual offshore accounts, how will we curb that problem of constant relocating of funds? Team Proposition, third speaker, you have 3 minutes.
I find it how ironic the opposition is talking about mismanagement of funds by the government, yet they're posing solutions that will be controlled by the very same government. As ironic as having the debate circle on a cube. Now, my name is Ronnie Kiven from the Moi Forces Academy, and I'm here to propose the motion that states African countries should introduce a wealth tax to reduce income inequality. And the question posed to me is, how are we going to solve the lack of accountability by the government? Simple. Experience. Number 2, framework. Experience. You heard him talk about how corruption has been so persistent and how we have mismanaged the present taxes that the people are removing. Now, what will we do? We have learned from the loopholes that we have seen in the present taxing systems. And so in our new systems, where tax and funding is generated from wealth tax, we will have measures to control those loopholes. I take you back to his framework where we talked about monitoring and enforcement of the laws. Now, they are talking about funding. They are talking about promoting gender equality. They're talking about promoting equal allocation of funds. They're talking about promoting education. They're talking about promoting healthcare. But they're not talking about where we will get all these funds. Now, we have the second speaker coming here and telling us that battling corruption will be the source of these funds. But let's be realistic. It's not like if we solve corruption, it will suddenly make the money which was misused by corruption to appear, and then we start implementing all this all this healthcare, all this education. And that is why, as Team Proposition, we are presenting to you wealth tax. Wealth tax is giving funding for promoting gender equality, for promoting education, for promoting healthcare, and for promoting equal distribution of resources. Now, let's be serious. These people are talking about using the present fundings in our government to be able to control all these things. We are talking about the same government in which the president proposed that the high-income earners in the government be taxed 5% more than the rest. This is according to an article by Standard Nation Media on May 17th, 2023. You see, even the president himself knows that there is no funds in the country. And so I struggle to see where opposition are getting funds to implement all these ideas that tackle income inequality. Now, once we have generated these funds from the wealth tax, how will we curb this income inequality? We have education, investing in education. We've talked about a country where the 10% own 70%. Now, if we ensure that there is equal education for all, don't you think those poor people can learn, and if they have the same resources as the rich people, then you can curb that inequality problem in the future from the very roots, where we start curbing the inequality problem from when they are children. Thank you.
Team Opposition, third speaker, you have 3 minutes.
He says we give delusional cases, while they're out here selling us an illusion of wealth tax. Well, guess what? I am the oracle, and I am here to open your eyes. They pose a question of, if we keep relocating our funds to offshore accounts and other countries also impose the same thing, will we keep relocating it and relocating it and relocating it? Well, if the East African countries cannot come together to form a common bloc, how will they be able to come to this agreement? Now, basically, our stance as side opposition is there is no necessity for wealth tax. For if we utilize the current funds that we have, we will solve income inequality. According to transparency.org, Africa loses 140 billion US dollars annually to corruption. This goes to show us that Africa actually has these funds. We do not need more funds from wealth taxes. The revenue collected is aimed at reducing income inequality. That is what they are trying to propagate to us. But the revenue that is currently collected is more than enough to find the solutions that we are giving you. And let us look at them. Access to financial services. According to a World Bank survey, only 20% of families have formal bank accounts in Tanzania. The percentage is as low as 5%, and in Liberia, as low as 15%. So improving access to financial services such as banking, credit, and microfinance can save and build assets. This can therefore promote economic inclusion and contribute to reducing income disparities. So what we are basically saying is that they should teach these Africans to actually save their money so that we can be able to use our money to create smaller businesses that will reduce the income disparities. We have given you the Gini coefficients of African countries that have been able to reduce the income inequalities without actually having to implement wealth tax, but by simply implementing the solutions that we are giving you. Solution number 2, encouraging economic diversification. Okay, according to a survey by Commercial Agriculture for Smallholders and Agribusiness Programs, agriculture and small medium enterprises in sub-Saharan Africa are grappling with a 74.5 million US dollars, or roughly 83% annual financing gap. Where does all this money go to? We need accountability, we need transparency for us to achieve income equality. Promoting economic diversification and supporting entrepreneurship can therefore create more opportunities for income generations, therefore encouraging the growth of small and medium-sized enterprises. The growth of small and medium-sized enterprises and providing support for startups to foster economic growth and therefore reduce income inequality. Third, international cooperation. Addressing a global income inequality requires international cooperation. So if we therefore come together and actually cooperate, we will be able to implement all these solutions that we have tabled to you, and therefore reduce income inequality without necessarily having to employ wealth tax, which will basically be collecting more tax for the government to squander. So let us be wise. Thank you.
Team Proposition, you have 1 minute to give your closing remark.
I want to quote 165 million lost through corruption. I want to quote, we should utilize the current funds. My question is, you don't just lose 165 million and suddenly have funds to implement, right? We have corruption, we have these funds that are lost, and we have wealth tax, because everything that the opposition has come and done, we have totally agreed with 100%, except we are facing the issue of income inequality. So let's solve the corruption, let's solve all of that bringing to the table. Where will the funds to solve the income inequality come from? Because, ladies and gentlemen, that is the gist of the motion. Now, we have come and we have talked about the exact same thing, eradicating corruption, surprise, surprise, in our framework. Because everything they have said is part of our framework, but then we are also acknowledging the fact that there are no funds to reduce this income inequality. So what are we bringing? The funds. How? Wealth tax. Peace.
Team Opposition, you have 1 minute to give your closing remark.
I begin now. When we solve corruption, where will these funds come? The funds come from an accountable government that takes care of our taxes, that will reduce income inequality. These funds would suddenly reappear, we agree, but then the funds that we are losing won't be lost. We need to solve income inequality, and among the causes of income inequality are corruption. If we solve corruption, it means we are not losing $140 billion. It means we are gaining, we still retain our $140 billion to fix income inequality, to channel it to better education, to channel it to better health services, to channel it to inclusive economic initiatives. So, we have told you there is no need to give a corrupt government more taxes to embezzle. Take it as an example of you have a friend in debt. This friend of yours hasn't paid you that debt. And this friend comes to you and tells you, please, give me some more debt, and then I will reaffirm my ways, I will stop drinking, I will stop using my funds badly, and I will pay you everything you have, while he's been incapable of paying you, and he has been incapable of reforming right now when he has that debt. This government can simply serve us only when it corrects itself. There is no need to impose a tax burden on the wealthy. We solve corruption, we solve income inequality. That 10% who control the 70% of wealth won't even exist if corruption is taken out of the picture. There will be no need for wealth tax, and there will be no need for them. Thank you.
Both teams very well prepared. Both teams very well executed. You know, the motion very well executed. Your style and presentation, fantastic. Your mastery of language, fantastic. This I'm speaking to both teams, yeah? Passion and conviction, fantastic. And so you can imagine where we narrowed down to. When we are, to break this tie, it had to narrow down to the arguments. Are they actually making sense? Are the solutions you're actually offering making sense? And it was not very easy. But I think towards the end, it became clear. The margin is very small, but I think what particularly was not coming out is this thing we are calling income inequality. What is income inequality? What is that, and what causes income inequality? I think we wanted to hear how is the wealth tax actually solving income inequality. I know Hamza and Ronnie came and told us about education and how to solve all those things. And I liked the fact that you said, to solve all those things require funding. And so we need to tax the wealthy to actually deal with this inequality. I expected the opposers to come and actually say that African states are largely capitalistic, to mean that you should eat what you kill, and therefore to actually deal with inequalities. I was waiting to hear the other forms of taxes that exist. You kept saying we have revenue, but we have corruption. So I was wondering, what is this revenue you're talking about? So I wanted to hear, we have income tax, we have, all these taxes. We have house levy in Kenya, for example, what is about to come. All those taxes are actually meant to remedy the income inequalities.
A sizzling debate that was. Hamza, whatever you're feeding on, keep on feeding on it. Judge Lois has hammered home the points that we had. The much I can say is, for the team progressing to the next level, ensure that whenever you give your argument, you must clearly give facts, statistics, examples where whatever you're suggesting has worked and how it will be utilized at home in relation with your argument. Keep it rocked. That was nice.
We have come to the point where we have to announce the winners of this debate. And first, a round of applause, please, for both teams for such an amazing debate. So, Moi Forces Academy. Team proposition, the judges awarded you 74%. A round of applause, please, for team proposition. For team opposition, The judges awarded you 73%. A round of applause, please, for Team Opposition. And the winners of this debate is Team Proposition, Moi Forces Academy. A round of applause, please, for Team Proposition. And thank you very much to both teams for gracing us with such an eventful debate. And we have come to the end of this debate here at the Debate Circle. Make sure to check our social media handles on YouTube, on Instagram, and on Twitter at the Debate Circle. And until next time, it is goodbye from us.